Hello, friends. Pastor Jim here. For many years, there's a group in our church that's been meeting on Wednesday mornings. And we have 10 or 12 of us during a good year that meet weekly. And now, with COVID-19 and the precautions for physical distancing, we've been meeting on Zoom. And the book we're reading right now is called JOY UNSPEAKABLE by Reverend Dr. Barbara Holmes. And she is the president emerita of the United Theological Seminary in the Twin Cities. And we're reading a chapter now, which is new in this second edition of the book, about Black Lives Matter. And she refers to a quote, kind of a classic quotation by the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, who was one of Barack Obama's favorite thought leaders, theologians as well, I believe. Reinhold Niebuhr taught at my seminary before I was there for decades and was a beloved and rigorous and challenging social critic and theologian. And I'll get to that in a minute. But Barbara Holmes is talking about the difference between the civil rights movement and Black Lives Matter. And certainly there's overlap, and the grief and the anger is in both generations. But there's a kind of a passing of the torch from the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter. It's taken a while. And one difference she points out, and she's a church person, is that the church is not at the center anymore. It's not a religious movement like the civil rights movement was in the African American community. And there are many who are churched folks and many allies, including, as she mentions in her book, the United Church of Christ. But she's talking about how grateful she was to be at a service recently in the Twin Cities. It was an outdoor worship service, and Reverend Givens was talking about the civil rights movement and says, now we've got this. The torch has been passed. And she writes, he thanked us for holding on until his generation got woke, and then he blessed our work. I needed to hear that. I'm grateful for my turn in the trenches, grateful that the work is being done in the church and in the streets, and grateful that another generation is on the move. Those of us from the 60s rebellions are tired, but aware that the struggle for justice is intergenerational. This makes it easier to pass the torch when you know that those who follow are woke. And then she quotes Reinhold Niebuhr, and this is something that Janet in our church has found to be very helpful in our Wednesday group as well, and has referred to it. I've used it as a kind of a words of assurance in our worship services on a number of occasions. And this is what Niebuhr says: nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as it is from our standpoint. Therefore, we must be saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. It's a beautiful, pithy quote talking about hope and faith and love and how we're saved by those. And the final form of love, which is forgiveness. She says Reinhold Niebuhr's words ring true. Although we wish it were otherwise, the struggle for justice is never completed in one lifetime or one rebellion. And I know there are some of you that are distressed by the idea that you're not going to live long enough to see the changes that you want to see. And God knows every generation before us has felt that about some aspect of their lives. We have the great story of Moses on the edge of the promised land, saying to his people, I will not get to the promised land, but you will get there. And of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Quoted that as well, and including on the night before he was assassinated. It is distressing to realize that our work is going to continue long after we're gone. We'd like to think that we would make more of a difference in the short time we're here. But alas, it is what it is. And we think about the act of faith, maybe a planting a tree. Someone said, if you found out that this was your last day on earth, what would you do? And some would respond, among other things, by planting a tree that others, our children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren and their peers might be able to sit underneath and enjoy the shade. Well, have faith, have hope, have love, and please continue to practice the final form of love, which is forgiveness. May God bless us all.